When I first brought it up to my parents, I didn't actually go on the diet until like 3 months after bringing it up to them. I brought it up around Christmas time. I told them, hey, I really want to try to start eating meat. Like, what do you guys think about that? And they were like, oh, they dismissed me. They're like, no, 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 you don't eat that. That's not good for your health. And then, around April, I told them, I was like, hey, I want to do this. I think it's my own body, my own choice. I want to eat meat. And I had a long talk with my parents, and they told me, we came to a decision that, okay, I could start eating meat, but I would be the one who has to cook it, and I'd be the one who has to pay for it. And, obviously they were hoping it would be just something that, a personality change, that I would get over it. I'm a kid. I'm not going to stick to it. And then after a year went by, they were really shocked that I was still wanting to pursue this.
Okay, good morning, everyone. We have Mady, I believe. Is that how you say it? I only saw one D, so I wasn't sure if it was Mady or Mady, but I'm assuming
Mady.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. I'm really excited to talk to you. You've got a really interesting, interesting story. I'm just as today's the first day on our new internet system, so hopefully we have a better connection here. So hopefully it looks better on my end. I don't know if you guys can tell a difference in how it looks and performs. You guys are watching. But anyway, Mady, you were, I guess, diagnosed with Tourette syndrome, and you lived with that for a number of years, I guess, and you've managed to get it under control and not suffer from it anymore. I think that's the deal. Can you kind of give us maybe for those people who aren't familiar with this is a good time to educate people. Can you tell us what is Tourette syndrome and how did it affect you?
Okay, so Tourette syndrome, you have to have it when you're a child. You have to have tics, and you have to have at least 2 motor tics and 1 vocal tic. So for me, I had motor tics like blinking and jerking my arms and making weird facial expressions. And then I had a vocal tic, which involved coughing and making a sniffing noise. So I got diagnosed when I was around 13 is when I started to show symptoms. I think I started showing symptoms as early as 9. My parents said they first saw me making coughing noises and making weird expressions. And then I suffered with it all through high school until I decided to go on the carnivore diet. So.
How old are you now?
I'm 20.
20. Okay, so you're still very young relative to where I'm at. It's kind of interesting because I was, as an orthopedic surgeon, Tourette syndrome is not something I would deal with. That's something more in the purview of what a neurologist would typically treat. And looking at, it's kind of one of those things where, it's one of we don't really know what caused it. Maybe there's a genetic, maybe there's environmental factors. It's lifelong, and all we can do is control the symptoms. And then here's the medications we throw out antipsychotics and ADHD medications, antidepressants, and all these different medications that have limited efficacy and obviously side effects and stuff like that. How did, and I guess in fact, you're not the first person that I've heard say that Tourette syndrome has gotten significantly better or gone away on a carnivore diet, but I just think that's really kind of cool and amazing. How did it impact your life? I mean, obviously, you've got, I remember there was a pro basketball player that was dealing with Tourette syndrome. I can't remember his name. Played for the Denver Nuggets. I forget his name. Maybe somebody remembers, but some people, the vocal tics are swear words. You can just start cussing out of nowhere. I guess it could be socially stigmatizing and embarrassing and probably puts a damper on your social life to some degree. How did it affect you? Was it something that bothered you quite a bit, or did you cope pretty well with it?
I coped pretty well. I didn't have as severe symptoms as some other people. I didn't curse, and I didn't do anything too crazy that caused attention to always be on me. But it definitely is a little bit confusing, and it's hard to understand why I'm making these movements, why I'm doing these things. So then that was a struggle with it. And, just being in school and being in kids, sometimes kids aren't the kindest. So it's a little frustrating, but yeah.
Yeah, I can see where that would, where, kids can be kind of mean, I mean, we all were there and we all went through it, and some of us got through it better than others. I assume you had a neurologist. Did you have a
Yes.
neurologist treating you? What kind of medications were you on? And while you say, I got to plug my computer and I notice it's dying, so you keep talking. I'll be right back.
So I actually never went on medication because I was so young that he didn't really want to, my neurologist didn't want to put me on any antipsychotics, which I'm very thankful for because obviously there's a lot of side effects with taking medicine. And I'm glad that I was able to cure it without ever having to go on any scary medicine that could have caused other side effects to my health.
What prompted you to try this crazy carnivore diet? I mean, I've been doing this forever. I don't think it's crazy, but a lot of people still think, well, that's nutty. That's crazy. Why would you just eat meat or, eat mostly meat diet? What prompted you to try that?
So I'm religious, and I've always thought that, God gave us animals for a reason. And when I was in high school, obviously my family disagrees heavily with me because they are all vegan. But when I was in high school, I was researching ways that I could help my health. And I kept seeing the carnivore diet like over and over again whenever I was searching for things. So I decided that I would learn how to cook meat and start going on my own diet. And yeah, I don't regret my decision, and I'll never go back.
It's interesting. You say your family's vegan. The plot thickens here. It gets a little more interesting in my view. But so I mean, so were you raised as a vegan kid? I mean, is that the diet that you were put on as a kiddo?
Yeah. Yeah, both my parents were vegan. So my mom cooked vegan, so I had to eat vegan. And as a kid, I didn't really care too much, but as I started to get older, I wanted to play sports and wanted to be stronger, and I was getting kind of annoyed about how all we ate was tofu and veggies, and so I really wanted to try meat and see if that would change my health and make me better at sports, and it did. So
and again, this is interesting because the vegan diet, and there's different ways to do a vegan diet. Some people just eat processed junk and vegan junk. Was your diet mostly sort of quote unquote a healthy vegan diet growing up? Was it whole foods, or was it a lot of just processed vegan products?
I would say like it was somewhere in the middle. We ate tofu like once a day, and definitely ate like a lot of broccoli and greens, but I did eat a lot of like Oreos and stuff as a kid, and chips and soda and stuff like that that wasn't so healthy. So it was kind of a mix.
So when you were thinking about, I mean, I don't know at what point I mean, were you intentionally saying, I want to get rid of my Tourette syndrome, that's why I want to try a carnivore diet? Or was there another reasons you did that? And did you at every point say, hey, let me just clean up the junk and I'll continue eating a vegan diet, but I won't eat the soda and the chips and see how that does for me? Did that ever cross your mind, or did you ever try that?
I believe I tried like my freshman year of high school. I decided to try and cut out junk food, no soda, no chips, no Oreos. And that didn't really change anything. But my sophomore year, that's when I decided to go on the carnivore diet. And I wasn't necessarily thinking about my Tourette's. I was just thinking about, I want to be stronger. I wanted to play on the varsity soccer team. So I wanted to, be able to bulk up a little bit and be a lot stronger and get rid of my acne and my eczema, which both went away. But I wasn't thinking about Tourette's until after about 4 or 5 months. I realized that I was barely having any tics. And it was, kind of a shock to me.
Yeah, that's really, obviously a kind of an interesting side effect that, you did it for sports and all of a sudden, hey, wait a minute, my Tourette syndrome went away. And I've seen a lot of people where, things that they never would have thought would have gotten better suddenly just go away. These lifelong issues that you think are just part of life, and then they improve, significantly. Let me ask you, how did you, with the family being vegan, was there a lot of pushback, like where because you're a sophomore, you're on, what is that? That's like 14, 15 years of age. Obviously the parents still have a lot of influence on your diet, and they're going to potentially go back and forth on that. But how did you navigate that? And when you went fully carnivore, because I assume you're in the household, how did that work?
Yeah, so when I first brought it up to my parents, I didn't actually go on the diet until like 3 months after bringing it up to them. I brought it up around Christmas time. I told them, hey, I really want to try to start eating meat. Like, what do you guys think about that? And they were like, oh, they dismissed me. They're like, no, you don't eat that. That's not good for your health. And then, around April, I told them, I was like, hey, I want to do this. I think it's my own body, my own choice. I want to eat meat. And I had a long talk with my parents, and they told me, we came to a decision that, okay, I could start eating meat, but I would be the one who has to cook it, and I'd be the one who has to pay for it. And, obviously they were hoping it would be just something that, a personality change, that I would get over it. I'm a kid. I'm not going to stick to it. And then after a year went by, they were really shocked that I was still wanting to pursue this. And, they still today, they don't really like my decision, but there's nothing they can do to stop me.
Well, yeah, you're 20, so presumably maybe, more independent out of the house. I don't know, but, did they, were they aware of the fact that your Tourette's had gone away? Did that not sort of cause them to at least sort of question a few things?
Yeah, so they definitely, when they started to notice that, I told them that I thought that there was a correlation to the carnivore diet. They're still skeptical on that, but they definitely have noticed that my Tourette's is gone. So, they're looking into it a little bit. My little sister, she's starting to go towards the carnivore. She wants to eat meat. And my dad, every now and then, he eats meat. So I'm hoping that in a couple of years, it might push them to, stop their diet. And
what was, and do your parents have a reason? Some people will go vegan because they think it's the healthiest thing to do. Others will do it because they feel, they feel that there's an ethical obligation. They feel it's better for animals for whatever reason. They have. Was there a reason that they pursued this, or was it your mom? Usually it's a female first, and the guy gets sucked into it. But is that how it played out with your family? Or maybe you don't know. I don't know how long they were vegan.
I'm not so sure, but I know there's a couple of different reasons. We definitely went to a few vegan marches and events when I was a child. So there's definitely an animal loving aspect, and then there's a environmental and a little bit of health, but obviously it's just kind of a mixture of things that led them to go vegan, and now it's been so long that I don't think it's hard for them to change.
Yeah. Well, you said your dad is eating some meat from time to time. Are they relatively healthy? Are they in pretty good health from what you can tell?
Yeah, I would say they're okay. Yeah. They're definitely a little bit, I don't want they're a little bit scrawnier. So
yeah, well, and I think a lot of people have success losing weight on a vegan diet. I would argue that it has to do with the inability to absorb nutrition correctly, but regardless, anyway. So, if you're happy, that's good. I'm glad you got the opportunity to try something different and found out what's been working for you. When you had Tourette syndrome, did you notice triggers for that? Were there, I see it's often, you can see emotionally, if you get angry, some people have tics, you'll see if you get sick, sometimes people have tics. Were there things that triggered you? Were there certain foods that you noticed, like sugary things, or what in your recollection, do you remember anything that made it worse?
I know definitely when I was tired, I would tic more when I was tired, and when I'd say when I'm angry or sad, I would have a lot more tics than normal. So, but it also, Tourette's can come and go. So sometimes, some days it was really, there's a lot of tics, and then some days there's not so much. So.
Yeah, but you never noticed any particular like diet, or maybe you didn't pay attention. It's hard to really attribute things to food because we're not thinking about that. And I just wonder,
Yeah.
if it, we certainly see certain kids' behaviors. If you load them up on sugary stuff, they kind of go crazy and sometimes are unmanageable. And I don't know if that would increase that. I suspect there's probably a relationship. What, as far as, so now you've been, how long have you been free of these tics?
So my sophomore year, I started the carnivore diet, and then about 5 months after that, my tics started to go away. So it's been about, I would say about 4 years since it's gone away.
That seems like a pretty good, remission, or something. How dare we say cure? I don't know. I think that's something that is clearly, it's kept it away. Are you at this point strictly 100% carnivore, or many people include a few other things in there? Where do you fall out on your dietary practices these days?
So I eat eggs, and I occasionally consume some dairy. I'm a big coffee drinker, so I put a little bit of milk in my coffee. But I eat a lot of just plain chicken and some bone broth and a lot of steak and red meat. So yeah.
Now, have you been back to the neurologist? Was there a point when you went to the neurologist and said, "Hey, look, my Tourette's is gone"? And if so, were they surprised, or did they comment on that?
So I haven't been to the neurologist in a while, mainly just out of cost. I'm a student, and it's really expensive to go to the neurologist. But I did tell my primary doctor, that I no longer have any symptoms, and they were pretty surprised. So yeah, but I haven't not spoken to my neurologist in a couple years. So
yeah, and I guess I just say, hey, if you don't need it, why? What's
yeah.
I just like it when we have the opportunity to educate these physicians and say, look, there's a better, because most neurologists, I'm going to assure, and maybe I'm speaking inappropriately, but I suspect most neurologists will say that you can't cure Tourette's with diet, and you just need to take drugs, and it's lifelong and permanent. And just like we hear about a lot of these chronic diseases that I guess that we're finding that change. So you're a student. What are you studying these days?
So I'm undecided at the moment, but I've been taking a lot of biology classes and some health. I'm really interested in having a degree in nutrition. It's something I'm starting to look into because I'm so passionate about the carnivore diet that I think that might be a good fit for me. But at the moment, I'm undecided, and I work at a gym.
Gotcha. Okay. And then do you find, and I don't know how, like I came across your social media. I think you messaged me on Instagram or something. I can't remember how. It was something, and I can't keep it all together. I get so many messages, but obviously you're on social media. So, and I assume you're sharing this fact that you've kind of gotten rid of the Tourette's. Have you had anybody with Tourette's sort of contact you over the time that you've been doing this?
I haven't actually. I think I should probably start to reach out more to some. I know there's a different Reddit Tourette's groups and Facebook groups that I should probably reach out to and tell them about this. I've kind of kept it personal until recently, when I've decided to, okay, it's been 4 years. I feel like I could pretty passionately talk about this. So I'm slowly starting to come out and share my story with people.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of people, once you kind of got past the disease, you're like, well, it's not my identity anymore. I don't need to, but I think it's also just a really great story. There's a question here about back to your vegan sort of circles. Were you part of vegan groups, or did you have vegan friends, or did you have people that now sort of look down upon you because you've incorporated meat back in your diet? Are you aware of any vegans that have been inspired by you to incorporate meat back in your diet?
So I did have one of my closest friends in high school. She was vegan, and she was really upset with me when I first went on the diet, and she didn't really believe in it. And then recently, she in college, she was researching nutrition for her. I think it was like a nutrition class, and she was coming up with carnivore stuff, and she messaged me and she was like, hey, I've been reading a lot about this, and I'm actually going to go on the carnivore diet. And she's gone on it for a year now, and I've been fully supportive. But I definitely have some friends that I have lost from going to the carnivore diet. They just don't understand. They won't agree with me, even if I've told them that, it's fine if we have our differences. They don't want to hear it from me. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough on that. When you mentioned, one of the reasons you thought about adding meat is because you wanted to do sports, and you felt like, I don't know, maybe you felt like you didn't have the right enough fuel or strength or energy, whatever, on the vegan diet. And you mentioned that to your parents. Did they suggest, hey, why don't you just eat some more pea protein? Or what was the response about improving your athletic performance from your parents' side, if they mentioned that?
My parents responded with that maybe I should train more, and maybe it was eating just, more. They bought me some type of vegan protein powder that I stopped taking because I found out that there's a lot of metal inside some protein powders. So I stopped taking that. And yeah, they just kept saying that maybe if I just train more, eat more vegan food, that I would get better. And then obviously as soon as I started eating meat, I started running faster and lifting more weight in the gym. So
yeah, what were the things, now granted, you were a young person, in your teenage years, probably hadn't had a lot of chronic disease. Obviously you had the Tourette syndrome that came up. What did you notice? I mean, about your health, about skin health, mental health, all the digestion? Did you notice anything different from going from vegan to meat, including meat and then fully meat based?
So the more I started eating meat, the more I realized that I felt so much better myself. I could wake up early. I had enough energy throughout the day. My acne, my eczema started to disappear. My skin was the best it had ever been. I started to crave, I had a lot of sugar cravings the first time when I tried to eat more healthy vegan. And I struggled a lot with, not trying to get into the sugars. And then once I started eating more meat, I stopped having sugar cravings, and I could focus a lot better in school.
And probably your grades got better too. I don't know.
Yeah.
Interesting. There's a question here about, back to when you had your tics. Were there other things prior to going carnivore, did you have a method to deal with it? Like if you started feeling tics, was there something you could do, breathe, whatever? Was there any kind of meditation, relaxation, things that you could do to try to make them go away that successfully worked?
So the neurologist told me to breathing exercises, hold your breath, count, exhale, and then I had like a little fidget toy thing that I would try and fiddle with when I had my tics. And it would help a little bit to get my mind off of it, but it obviously didn't do much.
Yeah, I can see, maybe a little bit, but the diet has been the most powerful option intervention for you. I'm just wondering, what component of the diet was leading to the Tourette syndrome? Because we're seeing like all of these diseases, it's just getting more common, just like all our autoimmune diseases. they become more and more common. And, is it because people are eating more bananas, or is it because people are eating, more whatever Doritos and stuff like that? And I tend to want to think it's more the latter than the former. But do you find, like, I mean, again, have you ever like said, hey, I'm just going to try some blueberries for a day and see how I do? Have you been able to experiment with some things? And I mean, I guess you've been tick free for 4 years, so maybe not. Maybe you haven't had the urge to do so.
Mhm. I think it was about 2 years ago, I decided I would try to see what would happen if I ate some veggies and some, I think I wanted to try like a dessert or something. And I ate those things and I did not feel good the next day. I felt really sluggish, and I was having digestive issues from the too much vegetables I was eating. I ate broccoli, I think. And yeah, so I haven't gone back since, just because I felt so awful after eating those things that I'm just going to continue eating what I do now.
Yeah, I mean, some people liken it, and I don't know if you drink alcohol, but some people liken it like having a hangover. They just feel so bad. They eat carbohydrates and they haven't done it in a while. They just feel really like bad the next day, and it's their digestion is, they're on spend half the day on the toilet, so not fun. What do you do? A lot of people often ask me, don't you get bored just eating meat every day or whatever? How do you sort of cope with that? Do you have different sort of rotations? You eat the same thing every day? How do you approach that?
So I kind of find what I'm eating to be so like satisfying that I don't really have a lot of um I don't feel like I need to change it up too much, but I do occasionally. Like sometimes I'll cook my eggs a different way. I'll boil them instead of scrambling them, or um I'll switch it up with chicken with turkey around Thanksgiving time. So I change it up slightly, but I don't really feel the need to change it up too much. I don't really get bored with the meat I'm eating.
And now, I mean, I assume hopefully you still have a good relationship with your parents and you see them, maybe visit them for holidays, or, again, I don't know how close you live, but when you're at your parents' house, are you still like, you got to bring your own meat in there, cook it yourself and buy it all? Is that still how it works over there?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Um, there's a few times where I've come home and she has actually bought me some meat, and I was really shocked when that happened. But for the most part, yeah, I go home, I get my groceries, and I cook everything, and then.
How's your little sister doing? Is it just you and your one sister, or do you have other siblings as well?
I have older siblings who they eat meat. But my little sister, she's trying hard to push against my parents right now. She's kind of in the same age as I was when I went on the diet. And so she started incorporating a lot of egg and some chicken into her diet. And my parents are coping pretty well with that. They're letting her do that.
Yeah, well, maybe you laid the groundwork, or maybe your older siblings did. Did your older siblings start eating meat while still at the house, or did they wait till they got out of the house to add that back in?
They waited till they got out of the house to start eating some meat in their diet. So I guess they kind of helped when I was, a kid trying to push against them. They helped lay the groundwork for me. So.
Yeah, and so it sounds like 100% of the kids kind of decided veganism wasn't right, despite being brought up with that.
Yeah.
Did you all, I mean, like growing up in a vegan household as a kid, did you ever like feel like you missed out on some things, with the other kids, some kids, maybe they're eating, and a lot of kids, honestly, they just eat kind of hot dogs and chicken nuggets and stuff that's really not that good for us regardless. It's just a lot of sort of stuff. But, sometimes, my kids, they get steak. I mean, I'm fortunate that I can afford to feed them steak, and when I feed them meat, it's usually, I think, decent quality food, better than some of the more processed meats. And I'm not, not that all processed meats are bad, but many of them are processed pretty bad, like McDonald's chicken McNuggets or whatever they are, just they're awful. And I think everybody knows that. But did you feel like you missed out growing up on those things or some of those? I mean, did you feel like being vegan as a kid was tough on you?
Um, yeah, I would say a little bit. I don't really remember too much of any, you know, getting upset about things. I do remember there was around 9, one of my friends at school, his parents were taking him hunting, and I thought that sounded really fun, and I really wanted to go, and my parents didn't let me. So I remember that being a big experience where I wasn't allowed to do that. And yeah, other than that, I think barbecues, wanting to smelling the burgers and stuff and wanted to eat that. But yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting that even just still exposing it to the smell, you kind of have this sort of visceral reaction to smelling meat cooking, and it's just kind of like for many of us, it's pretty compelling, and you like, oh, wow, that really smells good, and I really want to eat it. What part of it, if you don't mind, what part of the country are you in?
So I'm in Tennessee.
Tennessee. Okay, so Tennessee doesn't strike me as an overly vegan part of the world. Perhaps I don't know. Perhaps there's communities. I'm sure maybe more in the cities. There's probably a little bit more of that. As someone who is, I guess you're looking into health and nutrition as perhaps a career option. What do and many people that go to RD, they get the registered dietitian certificate, or I guess it's a degree. There's a certain, teaching, that you've got to eat these whole grains and fruits and vegetables and only eat lean meat. Well, let me ask you about this. Do you eat, I know you mentioned some chicken. Are you more eating mostly leaner cuts of meat, or do you have some fat in your diet, or how do you sort of play with that, and which makes you feel better?
I kind of mix between the two, but definitely I eat a lot of white meat, more than red meat, and yeah, I eat a lot of plain chicken.
And do you find that I guess you prefer that? Is that your preference to eat more of the white meat than things like beef and lamb and things like that?
Yes, just mainly because of price wise. But I think in the future I would want to eat. I love steak, so I want to eat more of that in the future. But just cost wise, I've been eating a lot more chicken.
Yeah, that's an issue for a lot of people, particularly these days, as we're seeing, the inflation prices driving everything up. Not in no small measure, meat has gone up significantly. I think something like 25% over the last year, which prices it out of some people's range. I'm very fortunate I'm not in that category, but I can see where it'd be a problem. Have you, do you have anybody from the carnivore community that you chat with on a regular basis? Are you plugged into the community a little bit? Or are you kind of in isolation with this?
Kind of in isolation, but I've been trying to reach out more to people who are in the carnivore community. So recently I've been, I messaged you because I heard about you on YouTube. So I've been trying to get more in the community and learn more from others. But it was kind of hard for me because I was afraid people wouldn't want to talk to me because of my family being vegan. So I was a little bit hesitant to start to really submerge myself in the community.
Yeah, I think you'll find that people are very nice and very receptive and very supportive. So I think it's always helpful to do that. And I think your story is compelling. And I think you're going to find that one of the things that makes me really just excited to get out of bed every day is I get to see people whose lives have been transformed from either what I'm doing or somebody's doing something similar to me, and we all get to see the benefit of that. And so it's a very rewarding thing that you do. And so you're probably going to find some Tourette's people. or some other issue that's similar to Tourette's. You know, we've got other neurological issues that come up that probably will respond pretty nicely to diet. So that would be fun. And I suspect after the interview, we probably have a few more friends. If you're interested, you know, if you're interested, we'll share your social media stuff, and I think we'll get some folks that will probably want to interact with you a little bit. Do you? Let me think. So often veganism is associated, and they say, well, it's we do it for the animals, and you know, why would you eat an animal when you don't have to, type of thing. And then yet here you are. The reason you had to is because you had a chronic disease that wasn't getting better. And you know, and I always ask sort of vegans about that, and they don't really have a good answer about that. What do you do to these people that are suffering from a chronic syndrome, you know, chronic disease, and they have to use animal products to include that? That's sort of not part of their calculus, I suppose. How do you justify, and I don't think we need to, quite honestly, but do you ever feel bad that you're eating animals now? Does it ever give you like this ethical dilemma that I'm somehow causing suffering? Again, knowing what I know about the animal industry, I think that is a very much an overplayed argument that doesn't really bear real reality in large part for most of what we see. It's a lot of these edge cases where people sort of, you know, look at this, and it's like, you know, you can make that argument anyway. But how do you mentally go from, and I don't know how much you adopted. I you know, I don't want to harm animals, but I need to eat. How do you justify that?
Well, one, I am religious, so I think, you know, animals are here for a reason. Why would they be here if they weren't for us to eat them? And two, I think a lot of the push for the vegan community about animal safety and stuff like that, I think a lot of it is taken out of context, or they try to find the worst of the worst. But I think for the most part, our farmers really care about the animals, and I think that it's a circle of life for animals to eventually die for us to eat them. So I think that it's a little silly to think otherwise.
Yeah, and yet many people do, and you know, and I've had the very great fortune and pleasure to interact and visit many ranchers over the years, and I mean, it's clear that they care very deeply about the animals that they take care of, and it doesn't benefit them to have sick, suffering animals in no way, shape, or form. Does it benefit them for their health to suffer at all? And I think that's something that I think there's, you know, arguably better ways, you know, to raise animals that have an impact on the environment. And you know, I think for those people, that younger folks that are listening, that want to make an improvement, rather than saying let's just go vegan, maybe you would say let's support something like regeneratively raised animals. That those clearly have some benefits. Now there's debate on, you know, how many people we can feed and what's actually the best for the environment, but certainly you can feel good about supporting that sort of thing. If you don't mind, I mean, you know, you allude to your religion says animals are put on this. I don't know what religion you follow. I mean, there's a component of Christianity which talks about that. Do you mind sharing what religious background you came from? Because your parents are vegan, and I assume they're the same religion as you, and yet they don't sort of buy into that God gave us animals to eat. What's the religious angle on this?
So my parents are, I come from a Christian background, but my parents have really become more agnostic, or I would even say atheist over the years. But for me, I've always really identified with religion. I'm Christian. And so that's kind of the reason why I think that, you know, God gave us animals. He created this earth, he created the animals, he, you know, gave them to us. So, but yeah, so I go to church frequently, and my parents, they don't really go to church anymore.
Okay, so and you know, I often actually we see that quite a bit. We see a lot of atheism and agnosticism within the vegan community. I mean, there's some exceptions, you know, like for instance, Seventh-day Adventists. Well, they tend to follow vegetarian style diet. Many of them are vegans. You see, like the Hindu religion, obviously vegetarian based. And so there's different ways to look at that. And of course, obviously it's interesting. We've got, Muslim faith where pork is sort of off the menu, the Jewish, faith where the same thing, and other, I look through and I'm not a particularly religious person, but I was raised in a Christian environment and read the Bible cover to cover at some point in my life. And you see the references to the sacrifices of animals and God finding that it was good and telling you which animals, the cloven hoof animals versus, it's all kind of interesting stuff. Do you find that at school, and I don't know what school you're going to, if you're going to college or something like that, there's often a pretty, and I think it's just part of being that age, you feel like you're going to change society and these sort of, you want to do good in the world. And then, later in life, you tend to get jaded. And then maybe later in life, you go through another phase. And, like I said, I'm in my mid 50s and I want to improve the world, but I have a different sort of belief system on what I think is going to get us there. But do you find that it's hard to be carnivore in that age demographic, on a college campus or wherever you're going to school at?
I think it just depends on what college you go to. I know, my one friend, she goes to college in that's Georgia, and most people there are Christian and they eat meat, but definitely there are some colleges like in California that are really liberal and they are pro-vegan. For me, I go to college in Nashville, so I get kind of a mixture of people who are vegan and people who are Christian and they eat meat. So I think it's kind of 50-50. I think a lot of people think that are my age demographic that they're mainly vegan and liberal, but I would say it's about even.
Do you find, and again, we live in an age where we have this targeted marketing, through our social media. They it's kind of funny. You're talking about something, all of a sudden an ad pops up. They're spying. Maybe they're spying on you. I mean, people will maintain that. There's probably some truth to that. Do you find that you are being marketed too heavily to go plant-based? Do you feel like you get that message directed your way very, very frequently?
I think I do occasionally, depending on what channels I watch. Sometimes I'll get vegan ads and where they're really trying to market it towards me. And I think it's really funny whenever I get stuff like that pops up. But yeah, there's definitely a push, and especially like California, and they have a lot of entertainment communities. So there's definitely a lot of push from them to go vegan that I see often in the media.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly there. And I think there's a lot of funding behind that. And I think it's, I think the vegan message has been co-opted by the corporations that see that there's a huge potential to sell ultra processed cheap foods with a vegan label on it, just like they do it with paleo and keto and everything else. And they're trying to drive this market share and trying to tie guilt into it and save the planet and, kind of all those types of things that I think are just clearly not accurate. Do you, there is with the Tourette syndrome, do you find that, how much do you feel that overcoming Tourette's is giving you strength to do other things? Is that sort of, I mean, it's something that most people don't do that. Most people, they don't overcome chronic disease. So it's got to be kind of empowering, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's definitely empowering. It kind of gave me a mental clarity, having this like part of my brain that took up so much space, constantly thinking about my tics, is completely gone. And it makes me feel, a lot stronger and like a better version of myself.
Yeah, that really is a thing. So now, now you're free of Tourette syndrome, and you're in school, and as you said, you're getting stronger as an athlete. What are your, do you have some goals? I mean, obviously finishing your education. Do you have any, like, this is what I'd like to do, outside of career, like things you'd like to do in life?
Um, I want to get into more like running and some like marathon stuff. So I think a goal of mine is in the future is to run a marathon. Um, but other than that, yeah, just finishing my education and um, yeah, I'm just continuing to work hard and yeah.
Yeah, I've got zero interest in running a marathon. But you never say never. But I don't know. Maybe that'll. I don't know. I don't know that'll happen to me. But you know, do you find that, like, outside of a carnivore diet, do you have any other habits that you find that are helpful to you? I mean, from a health standpoint, exercise, sleep, any other kind of things that you do that seem to benefit you?
I work out like 6 days a week. So I think working out is really helpful and good for your body. And then yeah, getting enough sleep. I always try to get at least 8 hours of sleep. And I find recovery, working out, and then eating well is all really important for your health.
How much do you eat a day, and how frequently?
So typically I try to get about 2,000 calories, um, sometimes more if I'm going to be working out hard. And then I um, eat a lot of like eggs in the morning, and then I eat my chicken, about a half a chicken, and then I eat like a generous amount of steak or a couple of patties of hamburger beef.
Yeah, and I get this a lot because people, for whatever reason, I'll say things like Instagram, I get a lot of younger followers, and a lot of them are college students, and they don't have a lot of money. How much do you spend, would you say, your weekly costs on food eating this way?
I think spend about like, let's say $100 a week on groceries. So my job at the gym pays enough that I'm able to afford um, that much on groceries a week. But good thing is I don't, unlike a lot of my friends, they spend about $100 a week too. But they're constantly eating out, which adds the cost. Whereas I don't really ever eat out, so I'm pretty I stick to what I'm paying for.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly reasonable. I think $100 a week, particularly in this day and age, no matter what your diet is, you'll be hard pressed to eat much under that, and so at the gym, do you ever um, I guess you eat at the gym, maybe eat one of your meals at the gym? Does anybody comment on, hey, you're just eating a bunch of chicken, or what? I mean, a lot of bodybuilders are used to eating a lot of chicken, usually it's broccoli and rice or something with it. But does anyone ask you about the stuff where you work?
Um, I haven't ate too much at my job, so no one has really said too much. But I have told other people at the gym how I eat a carnivore diet, and they've showed some interest. So maybe I should just try and, you know, give them a meal plan of what I eat and see if that will help them with their health.
Yeah, that's and I don't, I'm, I guess, somewhat, I don't know, I guess, not afraid to speak up, and I'm wearing these meat shirts, so I get asked a lot. I mean, it's pretty, and I'm happy to tell them meat, and it's been something that has been pretty easy for me. I don't see you as somebody that's out there waving the flag that I'm on a carnivore diet. Is that fair to say? You kind of keep to yourself about it, or are you pretty vocal about it?
Um, for a long time I've kept to myself, but recently I've been, being a lot more vocal about it since I've been on the diet for so many years. but sometimes I like to tell people because I think it's funny because a lot of people don't expect it from me. They expect me to be vegan or something else. I don't look the part a lot of times is what people tell me. So, I kind of find it fun to show people that carnivores can be all different shapes and sizes and
Right. Anybody can carnivore. Yeah, it's kind of funny because I remember sometimes people ask me, "Hey, what are you doing? You look like you're in good shape." And they'll ask me what my diet is, and I assume I'm like a vegan or something like that. I'm like, no, I'm like totally opposite. It's like, and it usually kind of it gets kind of a little conversation going and stuff like that. Well, let me ask you, because I won't, if you want, would you be willing to share your social media handles so we can get some more people to, support you and follow you, and maybe I'd love to get some Tourette's people, that find out about you, because I think this is an important. I mean, I love seeing people overcome chronic disease, particularly these, uncurable lifelong diseases that so many of us are told they have. And the doctors just scratch their head and throw more pills at it. And I think this is such a better way to do this. And so, can we get your social media handle? I know I can't remember off the top. I think I told you, but I can't remember. Anyway.
Should I put it in the chat?
Yeah, or just say it. It'll be on the recording, and we'll put it in the notes for the thing as well. And I just want to mention that we have a member in the audience that also was dealing with Tourette's. And I think, Frank, if I'm not mistaken, I think he has also improved his Tourette's. And he also was vegan, as I recall, for many years, and did some really good things as a vegan, really impressive mountain climbing and stuff like that. But I think, maybe, I don't know if I'm wrong to say this, but I think maybe the meat-based diet helped him with his Tourette's syndrome. So yes, you'll get to help people, and it will be fun. I promise you. So what's the social media again? Remind me.
Mady 618.
Mady 618.
All lowercase.
Okay, got it. All right. So anybody, you guys go check it out. Awesome. Well, anyway, Mady, I unfortunately have to go do some consultations and a bunch of other business today. It's been a wonderful pleasure. If you feel like jumping in and participating in our community, we'd love to have you at any time. We got a bunch of wonderful people here. We have meetings all throughout the day, and there's probably there's at least a couple people with Tourette's, probably within this community, and so you guys may be able to find a little space to talk about that or whatever. Ex-vegan, we have a lot of ex-vegans. I tell you, we got a ton of ex-vegans, so feel like bouncing something off somebody. Anyway, thank you so much. Folks, thanks for being here. We have a special guest tomorrow, Dr. Peter Bruckner from Australia. We'll be talking with him in the afternoon. I can't remember if it's 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. Pacific time, but I'll see you guys back tomorrow. I'll be here at 9 as well for kind of a generalized meeting, and then we have the other guest in the afternoon. So, okay, you guys take care. Also, Gussie Grills on Instagram.
Yeah, that's my other Instagram handle. 2
handles. I only have one, so I put the one I have. All right, guys, you guys take care. Thanks, everybody.